Hello and welcome, guys, to another edition of Tropicalfete Connecting with Authors. Today I'm here with Damien Shillingford. He is the author of this amazing book, I Am King. This is book one of the I Am King series.
Yes, this is the first book in the series, yeah. Mhm.
And today we are going to get into what inspired him to write this book. Just having a chat with him prior to this interview, just getting into certain aspects of the story. I am so intrigued to find out what inspires you to write these stories.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to write ever since I lived in the island. So I'm from Dominica originally.
Oh, you're a Caribbean person,
Yes,
just
yeah.
like me.
Yeah.
Big up Dominica.
Big up
Big up
DA.
Trini.
That's what's up. So yeah, when I left Dominica when I was 10 years old, but when I was there, I read a lot. I lived with my grandparents, and that's what I did for a lot of my time. Even when I got a little older, I continued with my love for books. Some of the first books I read was Alice in Wonderland, King Arthur, The Knights of the Round Table, Black Beauty. So these were books that my grandfather had in his collection, and I would read them over and over again. You know, they were very yeah, that's
They
what
were
really
magical.
inspired me. Yeah,
They
yeah.
were always
Yeah.
magical.
So early on, I was really into fantasy, and when I got a little bit older and I was living in the U.S., my mom introduced me for the first time to the Lord of the Rings. I'd never read anything like that before, and she took me to see the film. And after I saw the film, that's when I really got into the books, and that's what really inspired me. Because as much as I enjoyed the Lord of the Rings, the thing with the Lord of the Rings, I didn't feel it was really a story specifically for me. Because
It wasn't
Right.
representation.
Exactly. So, and you know, and respect to that fantasy and everything and it's done for the genre. But I definitely wanted to read stories where I could see myself in it. I wanted to see myself as a character. I wanted to be a hero, you know, and
I
I wanted
felt
to
that
see.
same way about Harry Potter.
About Harry
Because
Potter,
I
right?
was
Yeah.
into the series. I'm like, why isn't there much people like me? Why are
Yeah.
not the main characters
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
like me?
Yeah, and then it started off with that, and then also as I got a little older and thinking about it more and more, and loving fantasy as much as I did, I realized that when I started looking for Black fantasy and Black authors who wrote within that genre, I did find authors like Evan Winters, you know, with his wonderful series, Rage of Dragons, but this was all based on African mythology. But I could not find anything specifically for my heritage, which is the West Indian and Caribbean, you know? Right. So that's when I really thought to myself, you know what I really want to do is I want to write a story that's for me, for myself, and also for other West Indian people who enjoy fantasy, who like magic, who want to hear more about, you know, our mythologies and our stories and tell it from our perspective. You know, it's not, you know, slaying dragons and being a knight in armor, that stuff is all fun. But, you know, we have history too. We had our own warriors. We had our own
We
rituals.
grew up with fairy tales that didn't represent us at all. So
Right.
why not?
Yeah, yeah. And that gave me an opportunity to really discuss a lot of different aspects. So when I finally got into it, I made a serious effort to, because I did try to write a book before, but in many times I attempted it, I would always kind of fall short. You know, the longest piece I'd written was maybe 5 chapters into a story that was sort of connected to the Iron King universe. But it wasn't until I had my son Beau in 2014 that I really said to myself, you know what, I'm going to buckle down and do this. Because as much as I wanted this for myself, I also want to make sure that my son, who is born in the US, he's American, and he hasn't been to Dominica yet. Hopefully, we'll take him next year. But I wanted to create something where I could expose him to this and give him that opportunity that I didn't have to see himself as a hero and to see to get a sense of his West Indian heritage and his West Indian mythology.
And you know, that's one of the reasons why Tropical Fete does exist, because we want Caribbean American children to know where they came from, know the greatness that their people had.
Right.
We pass on the skills and the talents so that they can actually spread out and share that culture.
Yeah.
So we respect what you do a lot.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah. So yeah.
So moving on to my next question, are you a full-time or part-time author?
The dream is to be full time, but you know, life gets in the way. You know, I have my two beautiful children, Beau and Rose, and you know, my wife Melissa, and you know, we you know, I work in real estate. That's my main job, but my passion and my hobby really is my writing, and I try to put as much effort and time into it, you know, as I can. And I'm sure you could relate as a creative person. You know, you really have to get into that certain mindset, that zone. You have to tap into that.
Balance.
Yeah, to find that balance. You need to tap into that spirit that's gonna, you know, feed you that creativity. And sometimes, you know, it's difficult to get there, but I'm always striving for that. You know, I was able to get this one done. I'm currently working on the second book in the series, and I'm about 80% through with it. So hopefully I'll have it published this year, and that's just gonna be the next step to get me where I want to be, which is, you know, writing full time and sharing your stories with the world.
Okay, so but working part-time
Mhm.
and writing part-time and still finding time to juggle being a full-time parent
Mhm.
and working
Mhm.
elsewhere.
Mhm.
How do you balance? How does that affect your writing?
It has, so there are going to be naturally times where it's a little bit frustrating because I want to put that time into it and I don't feel that motivation. But in the same sense, if you're going to be a good writer, you have to be an active participant in your reality. You can't just live in the world that you want to create, because the things that I experience in life, this is what feeds the story. For example, in I Am King, a lot of my characters are based on real people in my life. So the main character in the book is my son, Beau. And the character has a lot of his own personal qualities that I know of him. It has some of my qualities of when I was a little boy. His companion in the book, his cousin, is his real life cousin, Julius. You know, yeah, let me show it to them. So this is Beau here. This is his cousin, Julius, and I named the character after them. My bad. There you go. That's better. I hope the folks can see it here. And the character Gavin here is a combination of who I see in myself as a man, but also is a strong influence from my uncles when I grew up, because I had a lot of different uncles and they had different personalities. And this is how the real world really feeds into it. So the thing is, if I wanted to make authentic stories and authentic characters, it had to come from an authentic place. And it's like a mix of things, but that's what brings it together. And I think that's why when people read the book, it's so relatable.
So using your life
Yeah.
with your fantasy stories
Yes.
are basically your inspiration to work. And does that determine when you take time to write, or when you choose, okay, I'm going to take this amount of time to write a story,
Mhm.
or I'm going to take some time, rest, recoup?
Yeah, I mean that was a big part in how I was able to even finish the first book. Um, I did need some time to really know what I wanted to do. So in those situations, when as a creator, and I'm sure again you would understand this, it could be lonely at times because you do need that space to think.
Yeah.
A big part of it is using your imagination and bringing these
Where do you
ideas together.
go to think? My place is the park.
The park?
Yeah, to go to the park, spend some
Yeah.
time with the squirrel.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I take the opportunities. Before I moved upstate, I would commute a lot. So, you know, riding on the train was a good time. I would, because when I write my stories, I always put up my own soundtrack to it. So I would go to my Spotify, I would create a playlist, and the music I'm listening to, yeah, right, because it sets the mood. You know, that sets the tone. If I want to write something that's very dramatic and emotional, you know, I'll listen to some Adele. I'll listen to, you know, you know, like some of that heartbreak. Yeah. What's interesting with the second book, I'm delving into writing romance for the first time. You know, nothing explicit. The book, just to put that out there for anyone interested, doesn't have any strong sexual content, doesn't have any, you know, adult language. But I am experimenting, trying to write relationships. And to do that, I watched a lot of movies, you know, with romance, and read some romance books, and I listened to that music to put me in that mind state. And I also kind of delve into my own personal experiences. So the times like that when I'm commuting, I'll use that time. And now that I'm not commuting, I am an early bird. I wake up like around 4:30 and 5 in the morning every day. So in the morning when I'm by myself, before the kids are up, before my wife is up, I'll have my coffee and I'll take that time. And a lot of it is, daydreaming and taking notes. On my phone, I have my the note app, and it's just filled with just little scenes and notes and quotes. I'll hear, a name, or I'll overhear a conversation, and then it will kind of inspire me. So I just use that really now, these early morning hours when I'm by myself, to kind of get my thoughts together and plan out, how I want to go with my writing.
Okay, so what is one of the questions about the book that nobody has asked before, but you wish that they would?
That's actually pretty good. I was thinking about this the other day, and this is something that I noticed after I proofread my book and I was ready to publish it, and I kind of caught it. So, and I was a little afraid that it would come up, but I think it's important to address. So, I'll just say right off the bat, I don't think I gave my female characters in the book enough, I guess, screen time. And I don't think anyone has really brought that up, and I'm not sure why it hasn't come up yet. But maybe it's just me being overcritical of myself. But when I was first writing the book, it was really kind of a tale of my personal life. Even though I'm using my son as the conduit and he's the character, part of his experience, or this character's experience in the book, was my own personal journey. And something I learned from one of my favorite authors, Stephen Pressfield, is when you write that first book, no matter how hard you try, it's always going to be a personal story.
Yeah.
You have to get that first story out before you could branch out, because you have so much to say about your own experience.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of dropped the ball there, where I had very strong female characters that I think I could have expanded on a bit much. So far, it hasn't come up.
It's a good thing that it's a series.
Yeah, so
we get to build on
exactly,
female characters,
yeah.
so that we look forward to stronger female roles in the other books.
Yeah.
Would females be the lead of this romance?
Actually, yeah. So in the second book, I'll probably post the cover again, on my Instagram too, because it's already created. But I do have a strong female character, and again, I think a strong theme in the second book is about relationships. Whereas in the first book, it's really about perseverance and overcoming challenge and friendship and family. Whereas in the second book, as the characters are expanding and growing, we can start touching on some different subjects. And knowing that I personally felt I fell short with my female characters, I wanted to emphasize that in the second book. So there are going to be, within the plot, several different relationships that kind of play off of each other. Some of them are going to be a little bit more toxic, and people could relate to that, because I'm sure we've all had bad relationships.
Yes.
Some of them are going to be a very a sweet and budding relationship where you've met a friend and then it turns into a romance. So I'm kind of touch on these different relationships within the second book, and they kind of go parallel to each other. And as you read it, you'll kind of get the sense of these different relationships and how they play out. And I think that would be very entertaining for readers.
I think it would be. So I'm gonna get a little deep into your personal experience as an immigrant moving to the U.S. from Dominica at this very tender age of 10 years old.
Yes.
Just getting some insight about the book. I do see that it is part of your story, like being from the islands and being exposed to this climate and having to survive this climate. What were your inspirations like through that time of transition? Who were the strong characters, like the Caribbean characters in your life that inspired you to open up? I know your mom is a big part of it.
Yes.
But I would like to, because it's Caribbean heritage, give those people in your life some shine.
Yeah, so I would say for me, I have a lot of pride in my family, the Shillingford family. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather knew Thomas Shillingford, strong Black man in his community. He did a lot for the island of Dominica. He was an architect. He had several businesses alongside my grandmother, Dorothy. She was the person who was behind the books, and she was that woman that kept everything in order. And my grandfather was the man in the forefront. I mean, this man was maybe 6'4", 6'5",
Oh,
strong.
he was a force.
Yeah, big voice, big presence, very, he's Roman Catholic to the core. And I was always inspired by his strength. And coming to the US at 10 years old, I had the opportunity to learn. I got my early education in Dominica, and I've learned a little bit about our heritage with, being an Arawak and learning about the Caribs.
Oh, you
Well, yeah, that's who our people are, and learning that, and then learning more about American history and how that connected with the slave trade, and realizing the strength in our people. I got the opinion that it was looked at slavery as a great suffering, which it was. But what I saw out of that was the resilience, because this did not destroy us as a people. It didn't destroy us in the West Indies. It didn't destroy us in the Americas, and we persevered through that. And part of that is what I felt I wanted to highlight, and that's why that was such a strong theme in the book. And I wanted to live up to be that respectable person that I think my grandfather was. He was that strong individual, and I wanted to create characters to represent that. I didn't want it to be all about the suffering that we went through. Like, we know we've been through that, but what I wanted to emphasize was the strength in us, as a people, to go through that and to persevere. And my grandfather, once I learned these things and I look back on how I knew him and his life as a man, I was very appreciative of what he was able to do as a Black man, to build up his family the way he did, to build up a business the way he did, and to own this land and do all these things in a time where you would think a Black person would never have these opportunities. But I was very close to a man who lived that life. He went through a very difficult time, but he was still able to find that great success. So that to me is what a true inspiration, and the kind of man I wanted to be.
Oh, that's great. Grandfather did a lot of things.
Yeah.
We come from similar backgrounds. So can you tell us where we can get your book?
Yeah, so my book is predominantly available on Amazon. So these here are just the soft copy, but I have hard copy options. You could also get it in ebook on Amazon. And besides the I Am King series, I also have a novella series that also accompanies that. I didn't bring any copies of those, unfortunately. But once you look up my book on Amazon, you'll also find my novella Natoya. And the plan is, as I build out my main series, I want to start also writing these smaller novellas that go along with it. And the reason I did that is once the book came out and I started seeing the reviews and people were telling me, their opinions and how they felt about it, there were so many questions about certain characters. Like this character on the book, this is Natoya. She ended up being a reader favorite. A lot of people had a lot of great response from her, and she's really the first character that you meet once you open the pages and you start the book. And there were so many people who wanted to know more about her previous life and where she came from.
Prelude is in place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of touch on writing about the Middle Islands, which is basically my home, Dominica, and I actually named the main island in the book Haiti, which is basically Haiti. And I did that because my wife is of Haitian descendants. Her parents is first generation immigrants from Haiti, and I definitely wanted to make that connection there. And so the novellas are going to be just these smaller books that are just going to expand on individual characters, reader favorites, to give them some background on them. So I'll have those too. Yeah, and all of that is going to be.
I can see myself diving deep into these books again. How the Harry Potters went, we got so caught up in other cultures and their stories and their fairy tales. It is so amazing in the Birth of Pressure to have a story that shows me what I came from. Yeah,
and have that voice out there. And that's why I really wanted to do it, because, like I said, as a kid, I did enjoy the popular genre of fantasy. But being West Indian, I said to myself, where are our stories? I wanted to do it in a very specific, traditional fantasy way, because that's the stories that I fell in love with, and that's the stories I enjoy. And I just wanted to just mesh those two together. And I feel even for readers who are not West Indian, it's going to be something very refreshing to learn about Jungle Bees and Sukuya learn about,
Yes,
and look at voodoo in a different light. Because what I do in the book is a lot of people might have that negative connotation towards voodoo,
yes.
not understanding, right, but not understanding that this was the religion of a people who are not an evil people, but this is what they believe. I'm sure, yeah, it was pagan, but this is where it came from, and it wasn't all negative. It wasn't about hurting people and cursing people. Voodoo also, had other effects for the people that use it at the time, and I want to shine a different light on that. Yeah.
Okay, guys, so we're wrapping up on today's interview. You should definitely get this book. I'm gonna dive deep into this reading. Looking forward to new things from you.
Thank you so
keep
much.
flying the Caribbean flags high. Keep Dominica. Oh, you have questions? You have
Yes.
questions?
Could you read at least any chapter, the beginning of any
Like a
chapter?
favorite chapter out of
Yes,
the book?
and why that's your favorite chapter for the book?
Okay, yeah, I could definitely. As soon as you said that, the one chapter. So there's a particular chapter in this book where our characters, after they've escaped the people who are pursuing them, which is Royce and his gang, they end up in the city. Now, to get into the city, unfortunately, Gavin, the very angry and impatient, jaded warrior who's trying to protect these whiny two little boys, had to attack a guard. So now they're being locked up. And the reason I like this particular chapter, because this chapter, the whole scenario is based on a story that I heard when I was a young boy. And I'll just give you that story briefly, and then I'll find the chapter and read it. But basically, it's a story about a man. He's coming home from work one day, and it's hot. He's a little hungry. And there's a mango tree, a big, big mango tree. He looks up, and there's the biggest, juiciest, yellow, red, ripe mango. It's ready to go. Obviously, he wants it. Now, for people who don't know, in the Caribbean, we don't go climbing trees all the time. It's not always possible. So what we did, at least for myself as a kid, when there was a mango high up in the tree, we'll take a stone and we throw it to knock the mango down. So this man sees this juicy mango. He wants it before the birds get it. So he starts picking up stones and he's throwing it. And he's pretty sure he hit that mango at least 2 or 3 times, but it just shakes and it doesn't come down. So he's like, I don't know what's going on here. So he takes off his work stuff, all right? He climbs the tree. He's sweating, and it's all, mango trees are big. Yeah, he goes all the way up. He goes all the way out on a small branch, and he sees the mango. He stretches, he reaches for it. He grabs hold of the mango, and he squeezes it, because he wants to make sure it's right, because he's sure he hit it with that stone, and it should have fell down. He squeezed it, yeah, it's ready. He knows it's ready. So now he climbs back down the tree. He starts picking up the stones and he keeps going. So this is a story that my uncles told me when I was a little boy in Dominica, and I used that story to kind of structure this chapter. So let me see. Hopefully I can find it. I don't know the exact number. Let me see it. Just bear with me one moment. Let's see. Okay, perfect. I found it. Okay, so it's chapter 19. Okay, so this is chapter 19. I am king. And here we go.
What page is that, sir? I'm sorry.
That's going to be page 226. All right, here we go. So chapter 19. Julius walked down the dark hall toward the guard room. It was cold, and the smell of mold and earth filled his nostrils. He paused for a moment, fear gripping him, the farther away he got from Beau and Gavin. He could hear the guards talking in the room. He could see their shadows dancing upon the wall. He knew what he had to do. It was not complicated. The tricky part was building up the courage to do it. He looked back, wanting nothing more than to return to the cell, a thought he never dreamed would cross his mind. He would have known that a cell in a debilitated keep would feel safe? Standing there in the dark upon the exposed earth of the dungeon floor, he felt like he was walking toward his execution. He heard the guards laugh. They were in good spirits and would perhaps pity him. Maybe he could explain that it was all a mistake and that his father would come and get him. Julius cursed himself for a fool and a coward. He was delaying, lying to himself, knowing well what they would do to him. The only one who cared about him was his father. His father was all that mattered. Even as he stood underground in the cold, shaken of fear, his father was out there, worried sick about him. He felt terrible not being not being with him, and he felt even worse when he thought of all the heartache he must have caused his father since leaving Mount Hope. Oh, wait a minute, I'm so sorry. This is the wrong part. I'm so sorry. It was the section before that. Hold on. I apologize. Let's see. Page 217.
Not at 217.
217. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry about that. Okay, we'll start in the middle here. Actually, it's chapter 18. I apologize. Okay. Chapter 18. Beau kept looking back, searching for the men who were following them, but they disappeared within the crowd at the gate. The Dominican guards took their possessions, and Gavin complained loudly, earning himself a punch to the gut. The guards were not gentle, leading them to the jail. Beau was overwhelmed by the smell of the city. It was like nothing he ever smelled before. No matter where he turned his head, he could not escape the rancid stench. The massive buildings loomed overhead toward the darkening sky. People were talking over each other, an unceasing wave of different voices engulfing the air around him. Unlike Mount Hope, everyone here was angry or outraged as they discussed the current oppression by Dominican soldiers. City living was going to be a difficult adjustment if Haiti was anything like Morrisport. They walked upon small, smooth stone streets through muddy puddles filled with half-melted snow as they weaved their way through the crowds. The guards led them to a fortified structure with 2 high towers. As they approached the stairs, the guards yanked them aside. From the main entrance, a squad of soldiers appeared out the large double doors and made their way down. In the middle of the group was a tall Dominican woman. She had olive skin and a head of short black hair. She wore a simple golden pauldron on her left shoulder and a large pauldron on her right shoulder, ornamented with what looked like twisting vines and leaves. She wore a flowing white cape over her armor with the traditional red and white tabard emblazoned with the Dominican signal of the birch tree. At her side was another woman with long black dreads and full pink lips. Her skin was dark, her eyes bright and intelligent, and she was more beautiful than any woman Beau had ever seen. She wore a fitted black dress with a brown fur coat draped over her shoulders. 2 tall men walked just behind her, wearing black male armor. They were also black of skin, with shiny bald heads and faces crisscrossed with scars. They paused where Beau was standing as the Dominican woman addressed the lady in black. As you can see, Ambassadress, we have everything under control. We have cells for the few troublemakers that arise, like this man and these boys here. Poor folk looking to cause trouble, but usually just to steal a bite to eat during the chaos. Most of the other folk are simple men of business and trade who want things to return to normal, which they eventually will. Your vessels and goods will be safe in our port. From what I have seen, the woman in black said, there is nothing that would lead me to be alarmed. Please, let us continue. I would like to visit your temple. I have heard it is a work of art that one must see upon visiting Morrisport. As they were leaving, Beau heard the Dominican woman's voice trailing off into the distance. I am happy to hear you are pleased, and I presume you will have a positive report for King Rancine upon your return to the Middle Islands. Beau felt the color drain from his face as they disappeared among the passing crowds. He heard his cousin gasp. Beau looked up at Gavin and could read the tenseness in his jaw and the forward brow. The guards saluted and continued to the Dominican stronghold where they would lock them up until the morning. After hearing that Rancine had representatives within the city, Beau was not sure which would be the lesser evil, sitting in a dungeon or being captured by the woman in black. He had hoped the city would give them some reprieve from danger, but Gavin had them arrested and thrown in jail. Even if they did manage to get out, they now had to worry about this woman who worked for the very man who wanted him dead. With Royce and his men chasing them out of the wilderness and the woman in black in the city, they were pressed from all sides. It was difficult enough to rid themselves of Royce. Now they had to contend with another foe. Too many people died between Mount Hope and Morrisport, and he did not think he could burden another death in his name. The longer this continued, the higher the risk of his cousin getting hurt. They needed to find a solution and soon. Nasilla had been false with him, but she at least wanted to see him home safely. They could not even trust Gavin, the only person protecting him. Beau knew he had another reason for helping them, and it was not because he believed he would be king, which he made clear at every opportunity that allowed him. The only person Beau could trust was Julius, but he was not being honest with his cousin. If Beau told him the truth, there was a chance Julius would blame him, and he could not risk that. It was selfish, but the thought of Julius turning on him was terrifying. Beau wished he was born as someone else. As if Julius could read his mind, his cousin nudged him. Beau, we should tell them that my father is in the city. If he got word of my arrival, he could free us. I don't know if that would be wise, Beau said. Rantine has agents in the city now. It's not safe for us or for Uncle Milton and Scholar Corin, wherever they are. The guard shook Beau. Cállate, sigue comando. Dominican soldiers were busy with the unrest of Morrisport, and the stronghold was buzzing with activity. They walked about with determination and focus, all working around the clock to keep the peace within the city walls. Their escorts led them through a confusing maze of corridors. Beau tried to keep track of where they were going, but it was no use. All the passages looked the same to him. They came to a set of steps that led down to a wooden door. Oi, we have 3 for you, the lead guard shouted. I can count just fine, Maricon, a man responded, swinging the door open. We reached capacity, no room available here. What are we supposed to do with them, the guard asked. Let them go, the man replied. Why did you arrest them? A man and his sons? We have bigger problems brewing. Beau got excited at the idea of being let go. He was not looking forward to seeing the inside of a cell. This is no minor infraction, the guard replied. The Moreno struck Captain Duraldo, and the little ones are no better than the father, attacking men of the guard. He is not my father, Julius snapped. Beau bumped Julius with his shoulder, surprised at his cousin's outburst. I am his father, Gavin yelled. He's my father, Beau quickly added. You said they were both yours, the guard replied, frowning at Gavin. We are, Beau said. No, we're not, Julius insisted. Are you two not brothers? The guard asked. No, we're cousins, Julius replied. Diablo, what's going on here? The guard behind the door asked, confused. It's really simple, Gavin said. They're both my sons. That one's my natural son, but since his mother is my sister, and she had that one by another man, that makes them cousins. No, that's not right, the guard behind the door said, shaking his head. Beau swallowed hard. They were about to be caught. They're still brothers, the guard replied. Beau and Gavin both raised their brows at the man's response. No, that's his tia, technically, a third guard piped in. No, escucha, the first guard said, stepping back, separating Beau and Julius. This one, that's his papi. This one over here, that's his tío, because su madre es la hermana de su tío, which makes her his tia. So yeah, they're cousins. They can't be cousins, they have the same mother, tío idiota, the guard behind the door yelled. The same mother makes them brothers. Yes, but his papi is his tío, the third guard chimed back in. So that's true, that's his cousin. I don't have time for this, the man behind the door said. That's unfortunate for them, but it's like I said, no room here. Your only choice is the old keep. Take them to the dungeon then. Vete sal de aquí. That place is still in use, the guard replied. I thought the cells were unfit for prisoners, seeing that they needed repairs. Some of them are still livable. We posted men down that way. With everything going on, we had no choice. Go on and take them over. Let the boys on watch know that Ignacio sent you. Su humano es su primo, y su padre es su tía. Bah, not on my watch. With that, he swung the door shut and the lock echoed from the other side as it was jammed into place. Beau frowned at Julius, trying to figure out what came over his cousin. Julius looked at him and Gavin with an angry pout. The guards took them down a new hallway. Julius, what were you thinking? Beau whispered. I was thinking we don't have to be stuck with him, Julius said, indicating Gavin. Gavin glanced back at them and he was livid. Julius ignored him. If we get the word out in the city, maybe we can get my father or Corin to save us. That was just foolish, Julius, Beau said, shaking his head. It was apparent this lie was going to complicate things. He should have anticipated that Julius, thinking he was close to his father, would attempt to reach him. Beau had to figure a way out of this before Gavin came up with a permanent solution. The guards, still arguing about their family relations, led them out a back door. They entered a yard filled with lumber and stone. Several men were working outside, repairing a section of the building adjacent to the stronghold. It looked abandoned with dark windows and filthy, weathered walls. The guards walked inside and went down steep steps into a cellar. It was like walking into a cave. The ceiling felt too low and the walls were uneven and broken in places. Besides the echo of their footsteps, Beau could hear water dripping in the distance. At the end of the hall, firelight danced off a wall with cracked stones. They eventually turned the bend and stepped into a room. It was a small space with a tiny hearth burning a cozy fire. There was a table in the center of the room, and 2 guards sat there sharing a meal. Against the wall was another table, covered with a dirty drop cloth that was once white. Various knickknacks sat on top of it, along with some pieces of armor. The guards who escorted them tossed all of Gavin's items upon the pile, except his coin purse. "Are you forgetting something?" Gavin sneered at the guard. The guard ignored him as he addressed the man sitting at the table. "You have room for 3? Ignacio sent us." "Aye, we can take them. Follow me." The guard got a set of keys from a hook hanging on the wall and led them down a damp hall with a dirty floor. They walked past several cells with rusted and broken bars. Some had men sleeping on the ground, but they did not stir as Beau walked by. He wondered if they were dead. Finally, at the very end of the hall, they came to a large cell with a barred window set at the ceiling. There was hardly any lights, and the bars were rusty and crooked. The guards put them in as the squeaky cell door swung shut with a resounding clang. "How long are you going to keep us down here?" Gavin shouted after them, but they ignored him. Gavin kicked and kicked at the bars, making a terrible racket, but it was to no avail. The bars were old, and so was the prison, but they were not going to break their way out. "What the hell was that back there, Julius?" Gavin growled. "My father could get us out of this," Julius replied defiantly. "You didn't give him a chance to help us." Gavin waved them off in disgust and walked away to stand beneath the single window. Beau rubbed his hands together to get warm and listened to the guard's footsteps receding down the hall. Gavin did not say anything. He leaned against the wall, his head down and his hands on his hips. Beau kept his distance. He could feel the anger radiating from the man. Julius leaned against the far wall and slid down to a sitting position with his head in his hands. Beau went over and sat next to him. They remained that way for a time with no one moving or talking. Finally, Gavin stirred, sighing as he had concluded exhausting thoughts. "We cannot remain here and wait for the Dominicans to decide what will become of us. We need a plan." "You should have told them my father was waiting for us," Julius said as he looked up at Gavin. "Stupid boy," Gavin replied. "Did you not see the woman in black? She likely works with Royce. We make ourselves known and it is all over. We are caged, but still very lucky. Our luck won't hold though. Eventually, the captain will come to question us, and they will learn enough to have you turned over to her." "Then what do we do?" Beau asked. "We are in this jail and there is no escape. They have guards posted on the way out." "Yes, they have guards," Gavin said, "but it is only 2 men in a confined space separated from the rest of the fort. If I can get my hands on them, I can kill them and we can sneak out." "Will killing them not raise the alarm?" Julius asked as he stood up, dusting off his trousers. "That would just make things worse and they would be searching for us after that." "We will be long gone by the time they realize what happened," Gavin said. "If we can get out of here, I can make contact with my guild. We have a hideout in the city. I can sneak us out by boat to Harlem." "What about my father?" Julius asked. Beau looked at Gavin, but he did not answer. Beau did not want the silence to go on too long, fearing his cousin would get suspicious. "Likely they already escaped the city," Beau blurted out. "Seeing as the soldiers began closing off the port, and with the arrival of the woman in black from the Middle Islands, they might have left already toward the new Brotherhood camp. Maybe they went for help. I still think our best chance of ever seeing them again is escaping from here." Julius sighed and shook his head. He walked up to the bars, looking up and down the dark hall. Beau looked at Gavin, and the man shook his head as if disappointed. Beau did not know what he was supposed to do, but lying seemed like his only option. He could not afford his cousin losing hope, not while they were in this situation. They needed to work together to get out. Beau joined Julius at the bars. To the left, it was utterly dark, but to the right, he could see the soft glow coming from the guard room where the 2 men were eating. "We can maybe call for help," Gavin said, "and then once they are close, attack them." "Wait, that won't work. I would need to make sure he opens the cell or has a key on him. Maybe one of you could act sick like you were earlier." "Could you not open this lock ourselves?" Beau had suggested. "Look how old it is. Maybe if we hit it together." "I already tried that. It's solid," Gavin replied as he walked up and shook the bars a few more times. "Besides, we have nothing to work into the lock to pick it." Beau began looking around the cell. Old chicken bones and tattered cloth covered the dirt floor. There was a pile of dirt in the far right corner, but Beau did not like the smell of that area, so he stayed away. "Look, out in the hall on the ground," Julius pointed to what looked like a long, thin stick. "Could that possibly work?" Gavin looked out and sighed. "Sure, maybe, but we can't reach that." Beau watched as his cousin spied the object outside the cell. Julius walked to the right where the wall met the bars. The stone against the wall from the floor to just above Beau's chest was cracked and broken. With some effort, Julius chipped off some sharp edges of the debilitated rock. He then put his back to the wall and, bending low, put his leg out of the cell. Beau watched in silence as Julius squeezed his body just halfway out. After some maneuvering, his shoulder was out. He crouched down even lower and turning his head, he squeezed out of the cell. Beau gasped as his cousin dashed across the hall for the small item on the ground. Gavin grabbed hold of the bars to watch when he finally realized what was happening. Together, Gavin and Beau stood in awe as Julius wiggled his way back into the cell. It's just a broken bone, Julius said, discouraged. I don't think it'll work. Beau and Gavin were at a loss for words. What? Julius asked innocently. God damn it, boy. Gavin snatched the bone and tossed it away. He grabbed Julius and pushed him against the bars and looked up the hall. Listen, you have to get to the guard room and steal the keys. They keep them on the wall. Did you see them when we walked in? You want me to steal them? Julius asked nervously. But they are right there. I will be seen. No, you won't if you're careful, Gavin said. Beau, tell him. He's right. It's our only chance, Julius, Beau said beneath Gavin's intense stare. It seemed like a good idea. Beau watched Julius lick his lips and glance from side to side. Julius, you can do this, Beau said, trying to encourage him. You can get us out of here. Don't be afraid. Feeling pressured, Julius reluctantly made his way back out of the cell and nervously stood in the hall. Don't just stand there, you bloody idiot, Gavin said. Stay to the shadows, move along the walls, and get to the guard room. Beau, come with me, Julius squeaked. Beau looked up at Gavin and the man sighed. So be it, go with him, but hurry up and don't foul this up. Beau tried to squeeze out of the cell in the same fashion, but he was having trouble. He tried it with his back to the wall, then with his chest pressed against it. Then he turned back around and got his leg through, but he could not turn his head the right way. Can you not get out? Julius said hysterically. Come on, suck in your stomach. It's not my stomach, Beau replied. It's my head. Why is your head so big? I don't know, Julius, Beau snapped. Gavin grabbed Beau and pulled him back into the cell. Beau sighed as he realized that he would have to send Julius on his own. He could see how scared his cousin was, and he felt terrible. Enough arguing. We are wasting time, Gavin said. He knelt before the bars and pulled Julius by his collar. Listen to me, boy. You can do this. You have no choice. You are the only one who can get out. Get the keys and get us out of here, or we linger until morning and await our fate, which is likely death or worse. You are a man, so act like one, damn it. That is your quest. That is your duty. Do you understand? Can you handle it or not? Beau could see that Julius was nearly in tears. To his surprise, his cousin took a deep breath, wiped his eyes, and nodded. Good boy, Julia, Gavin said, patting him on his shoulder. My name is Julius, he replied, looking unsure of himself again. Yes, Julius, yes, that's what I said, Gavin said with an awkward-looking smile. Beau saw that his teeth were straight, bright, and white. It was a charming smile, and he wished he saw more of that instead of the sneering he usually got. Gavin reached out of the cell and pushed Julius away. Now go, be a hero. Beau pressed up against the bars to watch his cousin go. Julius looked at him, but all Beau could do was nod reassuringly. Julius sighed and slowly made his way down the hall, fading into the darkness along the walls. He better not get himself killed, Gavin whispered, frowning. Beau looked at Gavin puzzled. If you did not think he could do it, why did you make him go? It's our only chance, that's why, Gavin said. I doubt he will get the keys without being caught. However, if they catch him, they will have to return him, meaning they will have to open the cell, meaning they will have the keys. It will be my only chance to jump them. Beau was speechless. The man was incredibly nonchalant about putting Julius in danger. What if they hurt him? The most he might get is a little scolding, Gavin said. Maybe a knock on the head, but he will live. Don't look at me like that. Gavin stood up and started slowly pacing. All they could do now was wait. Julius was on his own. Beau remained pressed against the cell, trying to see up the hall. He could not hear the guards' voices echoing as they spoke softly to one another. Good luck, Julius, Beau said to himself, overwhelmed with guilt. Be safe. So yeah, that's that. So in that scene, I used that story where with the mango. So Julius, he makes it out of the cell because he's so focused on getting this thing to try to get the lock, and he comes back in not even realizing, I could escape. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite chapters because it's one of the scenes where there's a bit of levity, with the exchange between Julius and Beau arguing, because I kind of wrote that based on hearing him and his cousin when they get into things, he's like, well, and they go back and forth.
They get into the shit.
Yeah. So.
Thank you for igniting our imaginations, and
Yes,
we
thank you for the
definitely